This is the only advice you need with business success speaker, Matt Hyams. All right, today we're talking about how to get the best ideas out of your people. We're going to talk about alternate realities, benevolent blackmail, and if anything really matters. All right, let's do this. How do you get the best ideas out of your people? Well, you have to get the old ideas out. And the way to do that is to have everyone repeat their ideas 3 times. When they repeat things 3 times, the more they repeat them, the more it sparks new ideas, it gets the stream of consciousness going, and it gets the old ideas out of their brain, the old routine ways of doing things out, and starts to get new brain ideas and new ways of thinking going. So if someone says, I think we should have a new email campaign for the customer, I'll say, repeat it again. And they'll say, I think we should have a new email campaign for the customer. I say, great. And I'll say it again. They say, I think we should have a new email campaign for the customer. I say it again. They say, I think we should have a new email campaign for the customer. I think we should have a new email campaign for the customer. I think we should have a new email campaign for the customer. I think we should have a new email campaign for the customer. I think we should have a new gimanunumana. I think we should have a new himanunukanamana. I think we should have a new hanunushananamana kanana. And that's the idea that I want to hear. Because everyone's got the idea, I want to create a new email campaign for the customer. But how many people are creating Hanu Nashana Manana Kanana? That's the real idea. But that's just one person. Depends who's repeating these things. So I had everyone repeat that line, and then I got different results. So have everyone repeat the same idea, and then you see what comes out of their mouths. So one person boiled it down to, I want to have a new email campaign for the customer. I want to know Hinu Kanamanasana. I want to know Himanu Namamastra. I want to know Himanu Kamazavana. I want to know Hinu Manana Manana. I want to know Hinu no Mumanana. I want to know Hinu no Manana. I want a new he knew, I want to know what he knew mañana for mañana. I want to know what he knew for mañana. I want to know what he knew for mañana. Well, this is different. We started with I want a new email campaign for the customer, and now we're getting to I want to know what he knew mañana. I want to know what he already knew tomorrow. Well, now you've got a whole new meeting that you need to have, because who's he? And how did he know it before it happened? And now you can meet about that. And that's a whole new idea. And that's going to be a whole new arena that you wouldn't have had if you had just stuck with, I want a new email campaign for the customer. So you've got to trigger your brain to enter into a different place, which means you got to get all the old words and all the old concepts out of the brain first. So have your people repeat things. Have them repeat their ideas over and over again. Because once we started talking about that idea, we said, well, who is he? Why does he know things before they're going to happen? And why does he use the Spanish word for tomorrow? And some people would say, and they did say to me, well, you just made that up. That was just gibberish that you and your people created meaning out of. And I said, well, what is language anyway? Isn't that just gibberish that we create meaning out of? And so eventually I got to a point where everyone in my company no longer subscribed to actual language or the physical world for that matter, because we did realize, there is a certain point there. Maybe all language is meaningless, so we stopped using language. We said language is just a construct. None of it really means anything. And we've proven that by discovering that there's a man out there who knows that something's going to happen tomorrow, and we want to know it. That was the other thing. We didn't know we wanted to know it before we found out that he exists. He may have been trying to tell us something, and we weren't listening because we didn't know he existed. But when we broke through the barrier of language, we got to the other side. And when we broke language down, we got rid of those constructs. We broke the walls down, the language walls, and we discovered there's a man out there who knows things that are going to happen tomorrow, and he uses Spanish words for tomorrow, and maybe he uses Spanish words for other things too. We don't know him yet, so we had to find out, and we never met him. But it turned out we did want to know what he knows, and we felt like if we could find out what he knows, well, then that might be our 4th quarter sales projections fulfilled. And they were, by the way. Long story short, the answer is yes. So once we broke those language constructs down, well, we started to just break everything down. And everyone in my company had a hard time believing in any construct at that point. So they didn't want to label anything. And neither did I. The table was no longer a table. The phone wasn't a phone. And this became difficult because people would call us and we'd answer the phone, but we wouldn't say anything because we didn't speak or believe in language anymore. And we didn't even have an outgoing message. If you were calling us for work, we would just let you know that we no longer use the same common language as anyone else on the planet. It would just be an outgoing message that a robot would record to telling people that. And it said, we don't use any language at all. We don't label things. None of us have a gender anymore. And we exist in a different realm in the ether. And if you needed to contact us, we would need you to access a different part of your mind, perhaps by taking ayahuasca or LSD or mushrooms. And we'd have meetings in those realms. And we'd meet people in alternate realms and have a business there, which had a completely different kind of business. You don't need money in those places. So we found out that those business practices, when we bring them back into the human realm, they were worthless because they didn't mean anything. And in fact, nothing does. And that became our new business slogan. Nothing means anything and neither do you. And when we came up with that, we rolled out that whole new campaign. So you see how this is going. It started with a new email campaign for the customer, but it turned into nothing means anything and neither do you. And then when we got that, business started to really skyrocket because we had more customers than we knew what to deal with. Of course, we didn't know how to deal with them because we didn't believe in the word customer or that customers were even a thing. So we let those customers slide by. But we were able to rebuild, and we kept that slogan, nothing means anything and neither do you. And people were like, this is interesting because we've been thinking that we do mean something. And we said, you don't. And let's start from there, we told clients, because that's where we're going to be able to get the real innovation going. We took down all the constructs. So I'll just say to you also, listener, you're not a thing and neither are we and neither is anything and none of it matters. So let's all stop doing it. And we used that stop doing it slogan for a lot of other companies. And it didn't matter what industry they were in because it worked across the boards because it had so much power. And so that was one way I got the best ideas out of my people. Another way to get the best ideas out of your people is to build resilience within them. Because people might have a good idea, but if they're not resilient and if they're bogged down in a negative mindset, they're not going to believe in it. And they're not going to tell anybody about their idea. So if things aren't going their way, then their brain won't be free to come up with a good idea. So you got to build their resilience so they have growth mindsets so they can battle their negativity, their limiting thoughts. So you have to tell them obstacles are opportunities, but telling them and them realizing it are two different realities. So as a leader, you have to build that obstacles are opportunity muscle within them, and you got to change their mindset. So you got to get them to have growth mindsets. And to do that, what I did was I would throw both literal obstacles in their way and I would throw emotional obstacles in their way. So for example, a literal obstacle might be they're coming down the hallway in the office and I would throw large exercise balls down the hallway, one after the other, like in Donkey Kong. And it would block their passageway and make it very difficult to walk down the hallway. They couldn't maneuver around them. And there would be a lot of them bombarding them. It would take up the entire hallway and they'd have to go back to where they came from and figure out another route. And that was an obstacles opportunity, figure out a way around those obstacles. And that would be frustrating for them. But they were like, okay, I can't go down this way because someone's throwing exercise balls for some reason. And they'd have to come up with an alternate solution. And that would trigger their resilience mindset. And that would have them find a way around that obstacle. And on a side note, someone's throwing exercise balls around the hallway became the subject of an email that went around, which was an email that I started to throw them off my scent. And I said, look, in the email, I said, if someone's throwing exercise balls down the hallway, I just want you to know this isn't cool. You cannot do this in an office. And they didn't know it was me because I would duck around the corner. And I would also throw emotional obstacles in their way as well. So for example, I might send someone an email that said, I did this a lot when we were fully remote, just to get control remotely. I'd say, your wife wants to leave you and your work is suffering because of it. And that would really confuse them. And they'd say, what are you talking about? I'm sitting with her right now. I said, well, she's not being honest with you. How are you going to bounce back from that? And they were like, can I get back to you on this? This is pretty heavy news to get hit with suddenly. I said, I'm just kidding. You don't have to tell them anything. In fact, don't tell them. Let's keep this between us. And I'd make them have secrets with me that they didn't have with their spouse. So I would have something on them. So I'd find out things that they did. I would do a little research, a little reconnaissance on everyone, and I'd find out their secrets, or I'd find out their weak spots, their emotional weak spots, and I would use them against them to help them ultimately. Because when I knew their secrets, then I'd say, okay, I know this about you, and I'm going to need your best work, or this could possibly get out. And they're like, are you blackmailing me? And I'd say, I'm trying to get the best ideas out of you. This is called team building. And a few people said to me, no, this is called blackmail. And I said, it's not blackmail, and I don't want to hear that word again. And then I sent another email out to everyone that said, no one's allowed to say the word blackmail again in the office or your secrets will get out. And the subject of that email was, your secrets are not safe. So this was all part of building emotional resilience within them, so they'd have obstacles to overcome and see the opportunity within them. Because I didn't have time to wait around if obstacles would just show up in their life. And I would tell them things that they'd have to bounce back from to get that practice in there. So they'd have to learn how to see obstacles as opportunities. But not everyone was evolved enough to understand my methodology, because that one guy who I had said that his wife was cheating on him, he said to me, well, I don't see what the opportunity is if my wife was leaving me. And I'd say, well, the opportunity is to rebuild your relationship with love. And he said, but not only is my wife not leaving me, we actually have a terrific relationship. I don't need to rebuild my relationship with love. And I said, well, you would have had to if she was leaving you, and you were not prepared to rebuild your relationship with love. And by the way, it shows in your work, which I felt for a long time. There's no love in your work. And he said, but you're creating a scenario that doesn't exist to make me live in a false reality that I don't need to live in to create resilience that I may already have. And I said, let's dial this back. I said, what is reality in the first place? And that stopped him in his tracks, because he ultimately didn't know. And it was around that time that I started implementing what is reality meetings at the office, where we'd all get together to discuss that, because that started to get me thinking, well, what is reality? And we'd have a morning what is reality conversation just to get it all out on the table. What's everyone's idea of reality? And during those meetings, I would leave and they would have to keep talking, and I'd film those meetings, and then I would edit it up into shorter segments, and I'd sell the footage of them talking about what is reality to psychological researchers. That's one way I made money on the side hustle. I knew about these studies. Researchers were interested in how do people respond when you turn the heat up in a room if they're talking about the nature of reality. And that was one study some psychological researchers were doing. And I made some money that I needed at a critical time in my life by videotaping those meetings of my people talking about what is reality and then selling them to researchers. And I'd always step out of the room because I don't deal well with heat and I get claustrophobic. So the employees would have the meetings, and they of course didn't see any of the research money because they didn't know about it, and this was my business anyway. And I had some personal things that I had to take care of. But we got a lot of great ideas because once we started talking about the nature of reality, we started to realize everyone's version of reality is different. So we could use that for our customers, for business. For instance, we had a customer who made a digital marketplace for campaign structures. And they used the slogan, what is your reality, to their customers. And the campaign was, we want our reality to be your reality. And they got 1,000 customers a minute with that campaign. They said, we want your reality to be ours. And people loved it. And we wouldn't have gotten there if we hadn't had those what is reality, nature of reality discussions. So those are a few ways to get the best ideas out of your people. Build that resilience muscle within them. Have them repeat things until you arrive at ideas you never heard before. Consider existing in an alternate reality to shake things up. And ultimately believe that nothing matters, neither do you, and we should all stop. All right, I'll see you next week.